In January 1944, the cold Pacific air hung heavy over Mare Island Naval Shipyard in California. Steel echoed against steel as final inspections rattled through the hull of a new Gato-class submarine, USS Tang, SS-306. Her black hull loomed low in the water, sleek and lethal, designed for silence and sudden violence. Fresh gray paint still carried the sharp smell of solvent. Dock workers moved with practiced speed. Sailors stood in heavy wool uniforms, hands buried in pockets, eyes fixed on the boat that would soon become both weapon and coffin. Commanding Officer Richard H. Kane watched from the pier. A veteran of USS Wahoo, already hardened by combat, Kane understood exactly what this submarine represented. Tang was not built for survival. She was built to strike, disappear, and strike again. Beneath her deck lay 10 torpedo tubes, 6 forward, 4 aft, loaded with Mark 14 and the newly improved Mark 18 electric torpedoes. Below that, cramped passageways, humming diesel engines, and batteries capable of carrying 80 men into weeks of darkness. The crew boarded quietly. No speeches. No music. Just boots on steel and the hiss of lines being cast off. Young sailors, many barely in their 20s, checked valves, tightened hatches, and memorized stations. They would live stacked in bunks barely wider than their shoulders. They would eat canned rations under red lights. They would sweat, freeze, and listen for the sound that meant death, propellers overhead, depth charges falling, steel groaning under pressure. Outside the harbor, the Pacific waited. Thousands of miles of open water. Japanese shipping lanes stretched across the map like arteries. Every tanker sunk meant enemy planes grounded. Every transport destroyed meant soldiers never reaching the front. Submarines like Tang were strangling an empire one convoy at a time. As tugboats eased her away from the pier, diesel engines roared to life. Black smoke rolled across the deck, stinging eyes and filling lungs. The American flag snapped hard in the wind. Kane climbed the conning tower ladder and looked forward, toward a war that rewarded aggression and punished hesitation. USS Tang slipped beneath the Golden Gate and headed west toward deep water, enemy steel, and a patrol that would push her crew to the edge of human endurance, where one mistake would echo forever in the dark. By early February 1944, USS Tang was far from the American coastline, swallowed by the vast Pacific. The surface was calm, almost deceptive, a flat gray mirror broken only by rolling swells and the low silhouette of the submarine cutting westward. Inside the pressure hull, time lost meaning. Watches rotated every 4 hours. Diesel engines throbbed like a living pulse, vibrating through steel decks and bones alike. When daylight came, Tang submerged. Ballast tanks flooded. The ocean closed over the hull with a dull, familiar roar. Electric motors took over, whisper quiet, pushing the submarine through enemy-controlled waters at a crawl. Red lights replaced white. Voices dropped to murmurs. Every sound mattered now. A dropped wrench. A careless footstep. Even breathing felt loud. Commander Richard Kane stood in the conning tower, headphones pressed tight, listening. The sonar room smelled of sweat and hot electronics. Operators hunched over their equipment, tracing faint echoes across oscillating screens. Japanese patrol craft prowled these seas, armed with depth charges designed to crush steel and flesh alike. One clear ping could mean hours of evasion or sudden death. Charts were updated constantly. The Philippines lay ahead. Shipping routes converged here, feeding fuel, food, and troops to the Japanese war machine. Tankers. Freighters. Transports. Targets that could turn the tide of the Pacific campaign if intercepted. Tang's mission was simple and unforgiving: find them, stock them, and destroy them. Life below deck settled into routine under pressure. Sailors slept inches from torpedoes, boots tucked under bunks, dog tags clinking softly with every roll of the hull. Meals were hurried. Coffee was thick and bitter. Sweat coated skin despite the cool seawater outside. The submarine smelled of oil, unwashed bodies, and recycled air, a scent that never truly faded. On the bridge during brief night surface runs, lookouts scanned the darkness. Binoculars swept the horizon for silhouettes or exhaust smoke. Stars hung low and sharp above the Pacific, indifferent witnesses to the war unfolding below them. Any light could betray their position. Any mistake could bring destroyers screaming down on their steel coffin. By mid-patrol, sonar reported distance screws slow, heavy, unmistakable. Merchant ships. Kane ordered course changes measured in degrees, speed adjusted by fractions of knots. The crew moved with rehearsed precision, tension coiling tighter with every passing minute. Somewhere ahead, enemy steel cut through black water, unaware it was already being hunted, and USS Tang closed in, silent and unseen, ready to make first contact in a war fought beneath the waves. The Luzon Strait was narrow, dark, and dangerous. In mid-February 1944, USS Tang slid into these contested waters like a blade drawn slowly from a sheath. To the east lay the Philippine Sea. To the west, the South China Sea. Between them flowed Japanese shipping fuel, food, troops moving under the false confidence of routine. Beneath that traffic, Tang waited. Just before dawn, sonar confirmed what periscope eyes soon verified. A convoy. Multiple merchant vessels pushing south, silhouetted against a pale horizon, their escorts spread thin. Commander Richard O. Kane ordered battle stations. The submarine descended to attack depth. The steel hull creaked softly as pressure increased, a reminder of how thin the margin for survival truly was. Inside the torpedo room, sailors moved without speaking. Sweat ran down faces despite the cool Pacific water outside. Mark 14 torpedoes were checked again, gyro set, depth adjusted, exploders armed. These weapons had failed before in the war. Premature detonations. Duds. Men aboard Tang trusted them anyway, because they had no other choice. Kane brought the periscope up slowly. The sea surface snapped into view, sharp and unforgiving. He counted masts. Judged speed. Calculated angle on the bow. The lead target was a transport, heavy with cargo, riding low in the water. Range closed. Seconds stretched thin. Fire 1. Compressed air roared as the first torpedo left the tube, followed by another, then a third. Each launch sent a shudder through the hull. The crew waited in silence, counting under their breath. 15 seconds. 20. 30. The first explosion tore through the stillness like thunder underwater. A towering column of smoke and flame erupted from the transport side. Steel plates buckled. Fires spread instantly. A second detonation followed, closer, heavier. The ship began to list, men scrambling on deck as alarms screamed uselessly into the wind. Japanese escorts reacted fast. Searchlights stabbed at the sea. Screws accelerated. Depth charges rolled off racks and vanished into the water above Tang. Kane ordered the submarine deep. Ballast tanks flooded hard. The deck angled downward as the boat slipped below the chaos. Then the ocean exploded. Depth charges detonated with bone-crushing force, hammering the hull, knocking men off their feet. Lights flickered. Tools clattered across steel decks. Somewhere aft, a valve screamed before being forced shut. The submarine shook, but it held. Tang ran silent. No engines. No unnecessary movement. 80 men listened to the sounds of their own survival, metal groaning, water rushing past, distant propellers circling like predators. Minutes passed. Then more. Gradually, the explosions faded. Escorts drifted away, drawn to the burning wreck on the surface. Kane brought Tang back to periscope depth. Smoke still marked the kill. The crew had drawn first blood. And now the enemy knew something deadly was loose in the Luzon Strait and would be coming back harder. The counterattack came fast and without mercy. As the last echoes of the torpedo explosions faded, Japanese escorts closed in on the position where USS Tang had fired. Their screws churned the water above, steady and deliberate, the sound carried through steel and bone. Commander Richard O. Kane ordered the boat deeper. Ballast tanks flooded. The angle increased. The Pacific pressed in from all sides. At 100 feet, the first depth charge detonated. The blast slammed into the hull with crushing force, snapping men against bulkheads and tearing tools from brackets. Lights flickered. A gauge shattered, spraying glass across the control room. The submarine groaned, metal flexing under pressure. It sounded alive. It sounded wounded. Kane ordered silent running. Engines were cut. Fans stopped. The boat drifted, heavy and blind. Inside, 80 men held their breath as if sound itself might betray them. Sweat poured freely now, soaking uniforms despite the cold water outside. The air grew thick, stale, hard to draw into burning lungs. Another explosion. Closer. The deck plates jumped underfoot. Somewhere forward, a pipe rattled violently before settling. Damage control teams moved immediately, crawling through narrow passageways with flashlights clenched between teeth, tightening fittings, checking seals. No panic. No shouting. Training ruled the darkness. The escorts adjusted their pattern. Depth charges fell in measured intervals, walking explosions across the seafloor above Tang. Each detonation sent shockwaves through the hull, compressing it inward, then releasing it again. Men could feel the pressure in their ears, their chests, their teeth. Some prayed. Others stared silently at the deck, counting seconds between blasts. Kane listened to the ocean through sonar. Propellers passed overhead, then circled back. The enemy was patient. Destroyers and patrol craft new submarines survived by running or hiding. Tang did neither. She sank deeper, past 200 feet, into colder, darker water. The steel hull complained, rivets creaking under loads never meant for comfort. Time stretched. Minutes felt like hours. The boat lay nearly motionless, drifting on trim and hope alone. Carbon dioxide levels crept upward. Condensation dripped steadily from pipes and frames, splashing softly onto the deck, tiny sounds that seemed thunderous in the silence. Another depth charge exploded off the stern, violent enough to knock a sailor flat. A circuit failed. Darkness swallowed half the control room before emergency lights snapped on, casting long shadows across strained faces. Damage reports came in low and controlled. Minor leaks. No flooding. The boat still lived. Gradually, the pattern loosened. The explosions moved farther away. Sonar reported fading screws, escorts drawn back toward the burning wreck on the surface. The sea above Tang began to quiet, returning to its deceptive calm. Kane waited. Minutes more. Then longer still. Only when the last distant propeller vanished did he give the order to rise. Ballast was blown carefully. The submarine eased upward, wounded but intact, carrying a crew that had stared into death and been spared. But the ocean had learned their shape, their courage, their weakness, and somewhere above, new hunters were already turning back toward the darkness where USS Tang still breathed. The ocean finally went quiet, but inside USS Tang, the war never paused. As the submarine steadied at depth, Commander Richard Kane ordered the crew back to work. There would be no rest. No celebration. In enemy waters, survival depended on readiness, and readiness meant reloading torpedoes under conditions designed to break men. In the forward torpedo room, the heat was oppressive. Diesel fumes clung to the air. Sweat streaked down faces already streaked with grime and oil. The Mark 14 torpedoes' long, heavy cylinders of steel and explosives weighed nearly 3,000 pounds each. Moving them through a submarine was a brutal test of strength and coordination. There were no machines to do it quietly. Only muscle, timing, and discipline. Sailors braced their boots against the deck as chains rattled and dollies rolled. Every movement was measured. A single mistake could damage a gyro, jam a tube, or kill a man outright. The submarine still carried the scars of the depth charge attack. Hull plates creaked softly. Pipes hissed. The boat felt tired. So did the men. Kane walked the compartments, saying little. He did not need speeches. The crew knew what was expected. USS Tang was on her first war patrol, but her captain and many of her men were veterans. They had seen what hesitation cost. Japanese shipping was still moving. Targets would come again. In the control room, navigators recalculated positions. Charts were marked and remarked. Sonar operators remained at their stations, headphones pressed tight, ears straining for the faintest sound of approaching screws. Every man aboard knew that reloading meant vulnerability. If escorts returned now, Tang would have to fight or die with half her weapons still unsecured. The work continued in near silence, broken only by whispered commands and the dull thud of steel against steel. Hands trembled from exhaustion, but no one stopped. Meals were skipped. Coffee went cold. Time blurred into effort, effort into pain. At last, the final torpedo slid into place. The tube door closed with a heavy metallic clang that echoed through the boat like a gunshot. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the report came forward, calm and steady. All tubes loaded. All weapons ready. Kane acknowledged with a nod. He climbed the ladder to the conning tower and raised the periscope just enough to scan the sea. Smoke still marked the earlier kill, drifting low across the horizon. Somewhere beyond it, enemy escorts searched empty water, unaware that the submarine below them was armed again. The crew settled back into their stations, bodies aching, minds sharp. They had survived the counterattack. They had reloaded in darkness, under pressure, without breaking. USS Tang was once more a predator, silent and prepared. But the patrol was far from over. Deeper into enemy waters lay heavier traffic, stronger escorts, and deadlier risks, and the crew knew the next attack would not give them time to recover before the ocean demanded another price. Night fell hard over the Luzon Strait. By late February 1944, the sea had turned black and restless, broken only by moonlight flickering across low swells. USS Tang surfaced after sunset, diesel engines coughing to life as fresh air flooded the boat. For the crew, the night was no refuge. It was opportunity. Commander Richard Kane believed in aggression. Submarines that hesitated died. Those that struck first controlled the fight. With torpedoes reloaded and batteries charged, Tang prowled the shipping lanes on the surface, faster now, her silhouette nearly invisible against the dark horizon. Lookouts strained their eyes, binoculars sweeping constantly. Every shadow could be a mast. Every glimmer, exhaust smoke. Just before midnight, the call came. Targets bearing starboard. Multiple ships. A convoy, poorly escorted, moving north under minimal blackout discipline. Kane ordered flank speed. The diesels roared louder, vibration shaking the deck plates as Tang closed the distance from the surface, gambling everything on surprise. In the conning tower, calculations came fast. Speed. Angle. Range. The sea rushed past, cold spray lashing the bridge. The American flag snapped violently in the wind before being hauled down. No identification. No mercy. The attack would be close, fast, and decisive. Tang angled across the convoy's path, threading herself into the formation like a knife. At point-blank range, Kane gave the order. Torpedoes streaked from the forward tubes, white wakes briefly visible under moonlight before disappearing into darkness. Seconds later, the night exploded. A tanker erupted in fire, flames shooting hundreds of feet into the air, turning the sea orange. Another ship shuddered as its bow vanished in a violent detonation. Screams carried faintly across the water. Alarms wailed aboard enemy vessels as confusion tore through the convoy. Japanese escorts reacted instantly. Searchlights snapped on, stabbing blindly across the waves. Gunfire cracked into the night, tracers arcing uselessly toward empty water. Kane ordered hard turns, Tang weaving between burning ships at full speed, engines screaming as shells splashed close aboard. The submarine dove only when necessary, slipping beneath the surface to fire again, then breaking back into open air to reposition. It was controlled chaos. A surface attack executed with precision born of confidence and exhaustion. The crew moved without fear now, adrenaline burning away fatigue. Depth charges followed. Explosions rolled across the sea, geysers of water towering in the darkness. Tang crashed beneath the surface, leveling off just deep enough to evade, then rising again as escorts scattered, drawn to wreckage and survivors. Each maneuver was timed. Each risk calculated. By dawn, the water behind Tang was littered with oil slicks, debris, and fire still licking at the surface. Multiple ships were sinking or already gone, victims of one relentless night. The submarine slipped away beneath the growing light, her hull stained with salt and smoke, her crew silent and focused. Kane stood watch as the sun crept over the horizon, knowing the enemy would not forgive this night. Escorts would multiply. Tactics would tighten. And somewhere ahead, the ocean was preparing its response to Tang's audacity. By the third week of February 1944, USS Tang was running on borrowed time. The submarine had inflicted heavy losses, but the cost was mounting. Fuel tanks were low. Batteries were exhausted faster with every dive. Fresh water was rationed. The air inside the boat felt thick, heavy with oil fumes and unwashed bodies. Every man aboard could taste the petrol in the back of his throat. Commander Richard Kane studied the chart table in the dim red glow. Their patrol area lay deep inside enemy-controlled waters near the approaches to the Philippines. Japanese shipping was still moving, but escorts were tightening. Destroyers lingered longer. Patrol craft searched harder. The enemy knew an aggressive submarine was loose, and they were hunting it. In the torpedo rooms, the reality was unmistakable. Only a handful of weapons remained. The forward tubes were nearly dry. The stern carried the last reserve, precious steel cylinders that represented the final blows Tang could deliver before withdrawal became mandatory. Each torpedo was inspected with care bordering on reverence. Gyros checked. Depth settings verified. Exploders armed by steady hands that refused to shake. The crew felt the weight of it. This was no longer about endurance. It was about choices. Every attack now mattered. Fire too early, and escape would be impossible. Wait too long, and the opportunity would vanish into open sea. Kane made it clear, the last torpedoes would be used only when the odds justified the risk. Night surface runs grew shorter. The diesels sputtered and coughed, burning the final fuel with an uneven rhythm. On deck, lookouts scanned the darkness with hollow eyes, faces streaked with salt and exhaustion. Below, sailors slept when they could, bodies curled wherever space allowed, boots still on, dog tags clinking softly with the roll of the hull. Sonar reports came in steadily. Distant screws. Faint echoes. Contacts that teased possibility but demanded patience. The boat slipped deeper by day, rising only when darkness returned. The Pacific pressed in from all sides, indifferent to courage or fatigue. Late one night, a new contact appeared, slow, heavy screws cutting through calm water. A large ship, possibly escorted, moving confidently through waters it believed were safe. Kane ordered a course change measured in degrees. Speed adjusted by fractions. The submarine crept forward, careful not to announce herself too soon. The crew moved quietly to their stations. Hatches were dogged. Valves checked. Final torpedoes stood ready in their tubes, weapons that would decide how this patrol ended. No one spoke of home. No one spoke at all. The target grew clearer with every passing minute. Range closed. The sea above remained calm, hiding the violence about to be unleashed. Inside USS Tang, breath slowed, muscles tensed, and every man understood the truth. This attack would not be another strike. It would be the moment that determined whether the steel coffin returned or vanished beneath the Pacific forever. October 24, 1944. The Formosa Strait lay black and deceptively calm as USS Tang prepared for another surface attack. The submarine had already destroyed more enemy shipping than any American boat in the Pacific. Fuel was low. Torpedoes were nearly gone. But Commander Richard Kane saw one last opportunity and refused to let it pass. Near midnight, Tang surfaced and charged. The diesels roared as the boat closed rapidly on a Japanese transport moving without blackout, escorted but complacent. The attack would be fast, close, and final. Kane ordered a stern shot, using the last Mark 18 electric torpedo aboard. It slid into the tube with practiced ease. Gyro set. Depth adjusted. Exploder armed. Fire. The torpedo left the tube cleanly, its electric motor silent, invisible beneath the surface. Tang began a hard turn to clear the firing track.
Seconds passed. Then more. No explosion. No impact flash. Only silence. Then sonar caught it. A growing sound. A low, rising whine cutting through the ocean's background noise. The operator froze. The echo was wrong. The bearing was wrong. The torpedo was not running straight. Kane understood instantly. The Mark 18 was circling. He ordered emergency maneuvers. Engines ahead full. Hard rudder. The submarine heeled sharply as men were thrown against bulkheads. But the distance was too short. The torpedo's echo grew louder, faster, a mechanical scream rushing back toward its source. There was no time to dive. No time to evade. Only seconds. The explosion tore through the stern with catastrophic force. Steel ruptured. Compartments flooded instantly. The submarine lurched violently, light shattering as water and smoke surged through passageways. Men were knocked unconscious. Others were killed where they stood. The pressure hull, which had endured depth charges in combat, had been breached by its own weapon. Tang began to sink. Kane was thrown clear of the bridge as the boat rolled. He surfaced amid wreckage and burning oil, stunned but alive. Around him, debris floated in the darkness: wood, metal, fragments of the submarine that had carried them through hell. Below the surface, the sea swallowed the rest. Inside the wreck, trapped men fought for survival. Some reached the escape trunk, forcing it open against flooding pressure. One by one, survivors ascended through black water into the night, only to be captured by Japanese escorts circling the area. By dawn, USS Tang was gone, resting on the seafloor. 55 of her crew were dead. 9 survived captivity. America's deadliest submarine had been destroyed not by enemy depth charges, but by a single fatal echo that turned back on itself. And as the sun rose over the Formosa Strait, the Pacific closed silently over the steel coffin, leaving behind only oil, wreckage, and a legacy sealed by one unforgiving mistake. The explosion had passed, but the nightmare continued. Deep beneath the surface of the Formosa Strait, what remained of USS Tang settled into darkness. The submarine struck the seabed hard, steel screaming as compartments collapsed and water surged through shattered sections of the hull. Inside, the surviving crew were trapped in absolute black, surrounded by twisted metal, rising pressure, and the certainty that time was running out. In the forward compartments, seawater poured in unchecked. Men fought blindly, crawling through debris, calling out names that would never answer. Some were already gone, crushed or drowned in seconds. Others clung to pipes and frames, forcing themselves to stay calm as the submarine came to rest more than 100 feet below the surface. Commander Richard Kane was no longer inside. Thrown clear by the blast, he floated on the surface amid wreckage and burning oil, wounded but alive. Below him, his crew faced a final decision. Stay, and suffocate. Or try to escape through water colder and darker than anything they had ever known. In the forward torpedo room, a small group reached the escape trunk. The air was foul. Carbon dioxide burned lungs. Hands shook as they sealed the compartment and flooded it deliberately, water rising fast, crushing the chest, stealing breath. When the pressure equalized, the hatch was forced open. One by one, men pushed themselves upward into the Pacific. Some never made it. Panic claimed them. Darkness disoriented them. The sea took its toll without mercy. But a handful broke the surface, gasping, disoriented, alive. Around them, Japanese escort vessels circled, searchlights sweeping the water, rifles trained outward. There would be no rescue. Only capture. Those pulled from the sea were beaten, bound, and taken aboard enemy ships. They were exhausted, wounded, and grieving, but alive. For the rest of the crew still inside Tang, there was no escape. The submarine, once their shield, became their tomb. At dawn, the sea was calm. Wreckage drifted lazily across the surface: wood, metal, fragments of the boat that had carried them through months of combat. 55 American submariners lay dead below, entombed in steel on the ocean floor.
Kane and 8 others would survive the war as prisoners, enduring interrogation, starvation, and brutality in Japanese camps. They would carry the memory of Tang for the rest of their lives, the sounds, the pressure, the moment everything ended. The Pacific closed over the wreck without ceremony. No marker. No grave. Only depth, silence, and the knowledge that one of the most successful submarines in history now rested forever beneath the waves. But even in loss, the story was not finished, because what Tang accomplished before her final dive would echo long after the ocean claimed her steel hull. The war did not pause to mourn USS Tang. In late 1944, the Pacific campaign surged forward with relentless momentum. Carrier task forces struck deeper. Amphibious landings multiplied. Yet beneath the surface, among submariners and planners, the loss of Tang landed with a weight few could ignore. America's most successful submarine had vanished, not in retreat, but at the height of aggression. Official reports were slow and incomplete. For months, Tang was listed as missing. Families waited. Commands reviewed patrol logs and intelligence summaries, piecing together fragments of radio silence and enemy shipping losses. Slowly, the scale of what Tang had achieved became undeniable. 33 confirmed enemy ships destroyed. More than 100,000 tons sunk. Fuel convoys severed. Supply lines shattered. Entire operations delayed or cancelled because a single submarine had passed through unseen. Commander Richard Kane and the surviving crew endured captivity until the war's end. Starved, beaten, and interrogated, they carried the burden of memory through prison camps in Japan. When liberation finally came in 1945, Kane returned home to a country eager for heroes but unprepared for the cost behind their victories. He spoke rarely of the final night. When he did, it was with precision, not drama. The U.S. Navy would later award Kane the Medal of Honor, recognizing his extraordinary leadership and tactical brilliance. The citation listed numbers, dates, and tonnage. It did not list the faces of the men lost in the Pacific, sealed inside a steel hull on the ocean floor. Those names lived elsewhere, in patrol reports, memorial plaques, and the quiet recollections of survivors. USS Tang became a lesson written in steel and blood. Her success reshaped submarine doctrine. Aggression worked. Speed worked. Initiative mattered. But so did the limits of technology. The circular run that destroyed her forced changes in torpedo design, testing, and accountability. Future crews would survive because Tang had not. Years later, the Pacific remains calm above her resting place. No marker breaks the surface. No sound carries down to the wreck. Inside the pressure hull, time has stopped. Steel corrodes slowly. Compartments remain frozen in their final moments. It is a grave without headstones, known only by coordinates and memory. The legacy of USS Tang is not one of tragedy alone. It is the story of men who accepted impossible odds, who carried war into the enemy's arteries, and who paid the full price of that mission. Victory in the Pacific was not free. It was purchased mile by mile, depth by depth, by crews who understood that survival was never guaranteed. And long after the guns fell silent, one truth endured: beneath the waves, in darkness and pressure, the steel coffin still holds the measure of what victory truly costs.